When we publish this episode, we are going to be covering this hot, new, exciting company that you're working on.
So when I came to the States, like the idea was, I'm going to learn like modern manufacturing. The definition of entrepreneurship was to literally go back to India and be an industrialist. Took the risk, started the business on H1B, and we started the company, raised an A. My H1B transfer got declined twice. I think the one thing that I've learned, have like a fuzzy but high conviction North Star, to stick to that North Star, and then work insanely hard.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting episode of the Aarthi and Sriram show, right? We have with us somebody who I think is fascinating for one, their backstory, what they've accomplished so far, and we're going to really dig into that, and what they're working on right now. So we have the founder and CEO of Rocks, Ishan Mukherjee, and Ishan is one of the most good-looking people we've ever had on the podcast. So he asked us to say this. So please, if you're in the comments, please vouch for this. I think he's a really good-looking guy, and we want to make sure we get that to his family, right? So I want to get that out of it. But no, seriously though, we've gotten to know Ishan a little bit, and I think he's one of the most interesting founders and builders out today. But Ishan, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and it's been amazing to get to know you, Sriram, and Aarthi. We've been spending a lot of time, so excited to spend the time with you.
I think, Ishan, one of the reasons I'm really excited to have you here, a couple reasons. One, the classic, you are our perfect guest, right? You are multi-time founder, builder, operator, entrepreneur.
Good looking.
Yes.
And I've sort of been through the journey, and this is it speaks to our audience because a lot of our audience are builders themselves, they're operators working in different tech companies or aspiring to be founders. So just excited to have you there. I think too, you've come from India, sort of similar as the immigration story, has come from a small town, and you're now here in the heart of Silicon Valley doing these amazing things. And, we're going to talk about your hot new startup and the origin story and all of that. And I'm just very excited. And finally, you just don't do these interviews. You're like a hard person to get to.
Yes.
It's very under the radar. And this is like one of the first public appearances you've done. So I feel like we just achieved something of a record here to have you here on the show. So because of all of that, welcome and very excited to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Aarthi. Huge respect to both of you. I've seen some of your podcasts. Everybody respects you. So first up, it's an honor. I think what you've done for the community is huge. So excited.
Yeah. Tell us who you are, Ishan. Just let's start there. Who are you? Where are you from? What's your story?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question. I guess I'll dive into kind of a chronological description based on both of your questions. So yeah, grew up in India, the eastern part. My amazing childhood, just like both of you, when we were growing up, hindsight, we can make kind of framings around, hey, it was not the most luxurious or things like that, but it was an amazing childhood. My parents were kind of middle class, very well educated, both went to IIT in the 70s. My dad worked in the public sector for Coal India, which is the PSU kind of coal of organization. And my mom, I would have to say that she's extremely smart, but to kind of afford the family, she decided to move to Ranchi, which is a place in Jharkhand, which is not the biggest town in the world. And she was a professor at BITS Ranchi. So she was an amazing academic. So both of them gave my brother and I an amazing childhood. We mostly grew up in kind of these mining in India, you call them colonies. So it's kind of the self-contained township where it was kind of people from all across kind of India who came in, and it was a pretty kind of multicultural kind of community. And we kind of went through kind of the Catholic school system. So I grew up in Ranchi, and I was an anomaly in the sense that my parents were from IIT. My brother was a surgeon in New York. He got into IIT not even trying it.
So you're the black swan.
Yeah, the black swan. Yeah.
So maybe for the folks who are not from India, could you paint a picture of how hard it is to get into one of the IITs and maybe what it means in the cultural context?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is probably something where kind of framing as to why I was always kind of the outsider or the underdog, like whether that's a small kind of colony or the town. And the culture is at that point, there were about 5 to 7 kind of premier engineering institutions, which are the IITs. The competitive kind of competition, I think close to 100,000 people applied to the JEE. And the treadmill was such that you would start preparing for it in the 7th or 8th grade.
Yep.
And even in my times, I was born in 88, so I was growing up 96, 98, 7. And a lot of folks used to leave town. They used to go into like to prep, like Hyderabad or Kota. Mm-hmm. And Sriram, to your point, kind of that bubble, both in my small community, in my school, the town, was basically that's the only path to success. And this kind of competitive pressure cooker to kind of prepare and kind of go from there. So yeah, that's kind of the environment. Kind of going back to my story, one of the advantages was my parents went through their process and they were phenomenal, but they did not want me to go to IIT. Like my dad wanted me to be a lawyer. My mom was pretty much say, you're super sharp. Our elder son is a superstar. You will figure out your way. So although I was on the track, I was what you would call like an all-rounder, right? So like I did a bunch of stuff. Like I did debates and MUNs. I was a competitive sports trivia person. So I was on Harsha Bogle's like ESPN thing. Yeah, that was my high school. So I did a bunch of stuff.
That's a
wait. I when Aarthi were preparing for this, right? Aarthi was like, hey, you gotta ask him about the quizzing, right? and I think so. But sometimes when you do the show in beyond Indian context, I try and translate the American terms. I would say what a lot of people think of like trivia content, but quizzing, I grew up in this, you grew up in this, is a serious thing, right? Like names like Derek O'Brien, shows like Mastermind. There's a lot of good stuff out there. So talk to us a little bit about like how quizzing played what it is, and how it it played a part in your upbringing.
Exactly. So is similar to the spelling bee kind of culture here, but mostly for high school, you would have a group of people in a school who would be kind of professional quizzers, and it's usually general knowledge or domain specific. Domains are mostly sports or like civics or like politics, and you would get into that in the 5th grade, 6th grade, and once you're in that, that's pretty much all consuming. There's inter-school competition, town, state, national, and there were the upper echelon was these broadcasted shows. So there was a show that Derek O'Brien did, and then there was Harsha Bole, the sports piece. So that was kind of my life.
Yeah, does that show still go on? The Bonvita quiz contest.
Bonvita quiz contest.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! It just popped into my brain. Okay, I'm going to Google. Like,
Yeah.
I used to come home from school and watch it just so that I could like just answer everything. It was like such an obsession at that time.
Yeah, I was on it. Yeah. So like there's no internet trace. I always say that was my only. Yeah, no, I did a bunch of stuff, but that was my highlight. So
I think it got canceled or it's in some YouTube format. So I don't think it's around anymore. But okay, we're gonna do some research later.
It got canceled, but in a weird art, Derek O'Brien became a politician. I think he's a big kind of politician now in West Bengal. But yeah, that got canceled. And then that same crew moved to Harsha Bole and the ESPN sports quiz circuit. And so for my 5th and 6th grade was Bonvita quiz come BQZ, I guess, BQC. And then all the way up to 10th grade, that's what I was doing. And I think it speaks to where the internet and the kind of actually amplified, I guess, what I was good at. Like growing up, because of the parenting I had, like we were just information kind of consumers. Like I would keep going back. I watched so much TV, read as much as possible, and we just had a broad range of things happening outside. So when it got to like quizzing, that just got super honed. I never read a book, never memorized anything. It was just a broader understanding of what's happening in the universe. It was always pretty up there in our kind of just family and in my bubble. So I remember like one of the good friends of mine, one of my prime motivations, my quiz partner, Anurag, rest in peace. Unfortunately, he passed away. Like him and I spent 5-6 years, just both of us learning about everything, like Liverpool, United, Maradona's history. And that was more so through kind of 6th to 10th grade. That was kind of mostly what I was doing. And I kept good grades. Like I could prep overnight and being in India, you'd have 50, 60 people in a grade. I would be top 5. But I was never like I wasn't be the first ranker. That was not my lane. And I have to give my mom credit in the sense that they never forced the lane on me. They said, hey, there's these multiple options. You keep doing you and you choose the lane. And it gave us the confidence to just kind of stick to my lane. And that's kind of persisted throughout, which is like, as things are processed, weirdly build a muscle where I just did not care what the world thought of me. So I just stuck to my lane and that kind of that.
I think before we move on further, I think I wanted to reflect a bit on the picture you portrayed, because I think it's a very sort of interesting slice of Indian society and culture and upbringing, because I think in some ways tells you a lot about your arc since, because you have a family which is obviously incredibly accomplished. Folks have gone to the top schools, other family members have done really well, but also you're kind of a part of this culture where, if you kind of think of that quiz circuit culture, you're competing against some really, really smart people. It's competitive, and you're in a format where you're kind of getting exposed to all these things which you probably wouldn't be studying in school. So it's such an interesting slice of, I guess, the Indian middle class experience that I think all of us really grew up in. And I think and honestly, I'd like to portray it. I think, and you just portrayed a very interesting version of it. Okay, so you had this fantastic upbringing. It's a launch pad. What happens next? Where do you go to college? How do you show up in the United States?
Yeah, exactly. I think kind of short story is, I guess till the 9th, 10th grade, I wasn't really into the competitive like engineering or medical field. Like my brother did it. I felt like I could wing it, but it was hard. Like I think my 10th grade was pretty good, but not some outlier outcome. And the 11th, 12th grade, I was probably pretty lost. Right, my dad moved to Bombay for work reasons. I think they invested everything that they had in us, and at some point they wanted, like in the public sector, it's not the most affluent lifestyle. So he moved to the private sector, or kind of the non-government jobs, to Bombay. And it was my mom and I. She was super busy. 11th, 12th, I kind of messed around. Like it was never my thing. So coming out of my 12th grade, I didn't get into the IITs. I joined what is now a famous private school, but at that point it was mostly a party school, Manipal, which Satya Nadella went to. So now that Satya has gone there, Manipal has completely changed its branding, but it was a really good school.
Wait, do you call it a party school?
Yeah, it definitely had the reputation of not being very serious about academics.
Mm-hmm.
But it had. But thanks.
When I look at you and when I look at Satya, the thing that comes to my mind is just party people.
That's right.
Right. Thankfully, that's what the image was. And it kind of speaks to the echo chamber. I think my mom and...
By the way, I will bet that the YouTube algorithm is going to show this to a bunch of people who are either from that school or not, and they're going to fight it out in the comments. Like, I will just bet a lot of money that it's going to happen right beneath us in the comments right now about what exactly goes on in Manipur. But anyway, sorry, go on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the modern India is so much different. Like we're a decade and a half since, and these schools are amazing. At that point, Manipal was great. Like I think I went to undergrad, and my mom had a pretty good idea. Like she kind of knew me the best. She still knows me the best, and her point was just do something that's interdisciplinary. Like I enjoy range. So I did robotics, which was mechanical, EE, CS, a bunch of things. I could build hardware. I understood software. I did code. So, but I also was in the machine shop. So that part I really enjoyed. Again, through my 4 years, I would say kind of being the first in academics was not my primary objective. It was learning stuff, being exposed. I definitely my quiz partner, Anurag, both of us went to Manipal. So we had that kind of core friendship. And I would say by the third year, my mom really got to me like, hey, now you got to decide what you want to do. And I wanted to do graduate studies. So I moved to the States to MIT in the mechanical department. Mm-hmm. So I came here for advanced kind of manufacturing and design. Kind of the core thread, which probably we skipped, is I grew up in small industrial towns. So Ranchi, Jamshedpur, these were towns which were built by and thrived because the decision of very singular industrialists.
Yes.
Like the old town of Jamshedpur was created because of the JRD Tata. And I grew up with this visceral kind of understanding that these small towns, which are literally villages, were transformed into these massive industrial towns, where every morning I would see hundreds of thousands of people going into these factories and then leaving. That always had a very strong impression on me. And so when I came to the States, like the idea was, I'm going to learn like modern manufacturing. The definition of entrepreneurship was to literally go back to India and be an industrialist. And that's how I came to MIT, joined advanced manufacturing. And that's where kind of my kind of process in the US started.
But it's a great description, I think, on some of those stars. My uncle worked in Ranchi, by the way. And he was an engineer. This is many, many decades ago. And it's interesting because we just had Ratan Tata, pass away recently, and it's kind of hard to overstate the impact the Tatas or some of the Ambani families have had, where you can kind of like shape entire industries, and a lot of these are obviously kind of refineries and petrochemicals and textiles, and that's where a lot of that work was. It just kind of shape entire cities and districts. But okay, so you're into robotics. You're off to the races.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd actually love to kind of dive into that, because a lot of, for me, I'm going to go back to my parents, I guess. You'll see, like, I'm pretty much like, my dad did a lot of work in really instilling the real value of these industry titans, as they would say, like the singular impact that one person's vision and quality of execution can have in the global economy. They grew up in a generation where they were coming out of IIT. There was no private sector. They were amazing, I would say, stewards or for the government's initiatives, and they kind of really saw India go from nothing to this kind of initially public sector driven industrial economy to now private sector. So what you just said, like the Ambanis, even Nehru and these humans, that was my definition of entrepreneurship. Like, I had a visceral feeling in my bone that my existence on this planet is to build companies, and that's what I will do. And that kind of drove me to kind of constantly kind of filter my information flow to look at folks who had this kind of opinionated impact in the world. And I kind of obviously used to read about Vinod Khosla and Sabir Bhatia, then these magazines, and I do feel like people underestimate kind of the amount of impact those individuals have and do have in the sheer scale of impact.
Yes, and by the way, for folks who don't know, I think everyone in the US in our world is very familiar with Khosla. Sabir Bhatia, is an inspiration because he was a founder of Hotmail. And funny story, I want to mention this because I want to have Google index this. Oh. And you know what? Aarthi knows what I'm going to say this, right? Sabir Bhatia is the reason, for the first time in my life, I ever used Google.com, right? And I looked up the story recently, but it is not online. But I want to say it to get indexed because I remember as clear as day. There was a newspaper article, I think this was like 98, 99, and it talked about an interview with Sabir Bhatia, and it said, "Hey Sabir, by the way, what about this rumor of you dating Aishwarya Rai?" Right. And in that interview, it said Sabir Bhatia opens up his laptop and goes to Google.com. It searches. And I remember reading that. I was like, what is this Google.com? And went up and looked it up, and we were off to the races. Now, many years later, I did tell Sabir the story, but I'm not sure he totally appreciated it. But there you go. I just want to have it on the record.
Absolutely. You're right. I think he had a huge impact. For some reason, he was this kind of first success story of an Indian engineer moving to the States and really having impact in their kind of early part of their career, and that trickling back to India. I think those stories ended up being kind of those exemplars. This is pre iPhone, obviously, and then even pre-internet. So my internet was similar. I used to go to my dad's office to kind of. I remember the first website was Alta Vista at that point. So yeah,
that's great. Ishan, tell us about Kiva. And when I contacted with Kiva and I first saw videos, it blew me away. Again, I still am to some extent. I love e-commerce. I just love the whole idea of logistics, fulfillment centers, how they worked, all of it. And so for me, Kiva was like science fiction at that point. So
Right.
how did this whole thing start? Like, how did you get involved in the whole
Yeah.
project as such?
Yeah, absolutely. A good bridge would be, I've always, because of that kind of focus, tried to like find and follow those kinds of humans. I think right now in Silicon Valley, you say, hey, follow great people. And when I was at MIT, I had negative interest in going through the career fair and interviewing, and never did that. And it wasn't my thing. My only thing was, hey, I'm here. I want to get enough experience to go back to India and build an industry.
Nice.
So what I was looking for was Meraki. Then they were MIT alums that moved here. Kiva. There was only 3 or 4 companies. I would literally call them cohort from the alumni book. Hey, can I come to the Bay Area and just design your routers? And they said, no, kid, just stay there and get experience. So Kiva was that. Like I saw Mick speak. He was this dual threat MIT HBS kind of combination founder. He came from a massive loss. He was the head of supply chain at Webvan. Kiva came from this idea that the fundamental unit economics to enable e-commerce is that it has to start in the warehouse, where you have to fundamentally change how these nodes and your logistics kind of network perform. And that's where it started off with. So I remember I literally just cold reached out from the alumni book. I said, hey, I just want to be part of this company. At that time, Kiva was private. They've been around for a fair bit. I joined a crew of MIT, Cornell, like engineers who could be full-time engineers, or we were all between the technology and the company. So you may call them forward deployed engineers today, or PMs or SCs. That was kind of my role. So that was my first job at MIT. The idea was we get this OPT. I'm going to work here, get experience, go back to India. While I was there, I think my definition of entrepreneurship changed for sure. Like up until that point, my definition of entrepreneurship was Ratan Tata or an Ambani, right? Like that's what I saw. There, I got to see day in, day out, like the sheer kind of will of Mick and the team and Amy and folks, who's the COO, and the quality of execution. I was just blown away. And
What specifically? What did you see?
Yeah, so like I'm an operator, so like I live, breathe execution, and because of just the way I'm pretty singularly obsessive, so I have my blinders on. I just kind of execute. So like in Kiva, like whatever I do, I got fully immersed. Kiva was a vertically integrated solution to automate the entire warehouse, right? So at the surface level, you would say, okay, Zappos before, where I fit into the CFO, the Zappos before Kiva, you had humans kind of getting an order, walking around the aisles, picking up the orders, putting it in a box and shipping it. With Kiva, okay, instead of 20 people, you probably need 10 people. That's kind of surface level value, but the true value is actually not that. What it is in a Zappos warehouse, because of Kiva, you can just store 30% more stuff, which means for every 3 warehouses, you don't need the 4th one.
Yeah.
And like those fundamental changes in there's micro unit economics which change an industry that allowed every e-com company, then eventually Amazon, to really kind of scale out the network. Yeah. So because of the vertically integrated solution, we from first principles, we just took data in of what your order delivery was and designed the whole thing. And that team was able to build the hardware, the firmware, the systems, the application, and all the forward deployed engineering as a pretty small lean team out of Boston. So that was both great learning, but also quite addictive. Like once I went through that process, you just strive for that greatness, right? And that becomes the game.
Wow. Okay. And so Kiva gets acquired by Amazon. So it's probably like a big deal, like total game changer, right? What do you decide to do next? Like, are you like, now I got to go do more startups because I've now been bitten by the startup bug? Yeah. Or are you like, no, I'm sort of burnt out. I got to go the big company route, go do something else that's more stable.
Yeah. And I think, by the way, one of the reasons I think we really want to go through your story is that I think often when you're not totally a part of Silicon Valley or when you are outside, it's kind of hard to know the kind of the life experiences and the stories which lead to somebody having the hot startup of the moment or something which they're building. So, and okay, just as you're kind of talking, you kind of see how all of these stack one on top of the other, bringing you to where you are, which is why I think it's like really interesting. So anyway, so kind of getting back to this, so you kind of done at the Kiva section, and then
Yeah, Amazon acquires us. I'm on an H1B. I think I'm on OPT. So I get acquired. I can't leave. Just to be very transparent, mixed people are going to listen to it. I was a good employee. I didn't know what stock options were. So I am the prototypical case of somebody who is just so kind of locally optimizing. I never asked what an RSU was, how much it is. I had literally no understanding of the game, as you're saying. So we get acquired. It's a great outcome. But for me, it was just learning. So I got into Amazon. A bunch of folks, Gavin, John Schechter, these folks, we were this kind of young bunch who were in the room with Dave Clark as they were kind of dreaming up the full rollout. It was just the best time of my career. Like even just the sheer scale of Amazon retail's logistics rollout. So this is 2012, 13, 14, right? So they were really kind of growing. So I stayed at Amazon. I was for about 2.5 years on the road, warehouse to warehouse, designing, helping the team design the rollouts, going back to Seattle. So I was essentially the integration lead for the back half. And I just learned a lot at Amazon. I'll go back throughout my journey, not once, it was always I will start a company. That never changed. This is 4th grade, 6th grade, 10th grade, not getting into IIT. It just never changed. So it was the only argument at that point, my dad being an amazing Indian dad, was like, you should get an MBA. So I applied to HBS. You go through that. Hey, get an MBA and come back. That'd be great. Got through the waitlist process. I kind of interviewed. So after Amazon, that was the only piece, but it was always the plan. So Aarthi, a quick question. I think you had a great episode on immigration. As you can see, my decision-making process, I always had a pretty high conviction, but fuzzy North Star. But I only made decisions every 2 or 3 years, because once I decide to do something, I go super deep. I don't really care about anything else. So I only come up at that point of a decision. And so at that point, I technically could not start a company because I was I think just on H1B. But it was not really the deterrent. Starting a company, especially a world-class company, in the team, the product, and the market. But since I was in an H1B, Mick, who's in Kiva, said, Motorola used to have this program where you work in different departments in a company. So why don't you work in smaller companies until you figure out your idea and get your green card? So that's kind of what I did. So after Amazon, I used to fly through San Francisco. I think some of the great people, like Chamath was an investor in the company I joined. All these folks convinced me, hey, you can start something now, or just work in small Silicon Valley companies and learn both the art and science of product building, team building, company building. So after that, I joined an early stage company called Premise Data, which wasn't a huge success. I joined as a product leader, kind of ran product there, and growth as well. So that was my next decision.
Got it. I mean, you mentioned immigration, right? And I think about for Sriram and I, this was it was a process. It was sort of tough for us. We came to the US and it was very uncertain. The big challenge for us was not knowing what could happen, right? And at any point you could sort of get kicked out. The process is just long and cumbersome. So we did that whole episode, and we've gotten so much reaction and feedback from people. And, tens of our friends have been through similar stories, way worse stories of struggles, just having to be leaving the country, no notice, short notice. And in your case, I think it was strategic to be I'll bounce around and learn from small companies. But if that wasn't sort of an obstacle, you started companies a lot sooner, right?
Yeah.
I think about just the opportunity cost of not having skilled immigrants here sooner to be able to start companies when they wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just so happy that the O1 and the EB1 options opened up. I actually got my green card only 2 years back.
Yeah.
This is my 5th early stage company, apart from one. So, it was not an option. But on the flip side, the conviction was absolute in terms of wanting to start a company. And yeah, it's kind of just kind of really interesting. I just hope like the O1 EB1 process gets a lot more refined and scaled out. And yeah, I think so. You move to Silicon Valley. I would say it's so easy for people like us to say, hey, we had a tough upbringing and the immigration didn't allow me to start a company. But to be intellectually honest, what I ended up learning was that to build an outlier company, especially in Silicon Valley, there's a lot of art that you can only acquire by doing it. Like you all been in great companies, and I know you were at Twitter and stuff. Like once you actually work in these companies, you understand the physics of them, like the ability to hire talent, building product, working with customers. I could have started a company. I came here to pitch companies, and that's how I got convinced to join. I think hindsight, no regrets though. I think O1 EB1 is probably the strongest asset America has in terms of acquiring and empowering talent. The process right now has got a lot more seamless. I think it's kind of a two-vector approach where you really expand the program, but also drive precision and the eval criteria, right? So if you look at my case, this is it. I am on this planet to build companies, and I'm an entrepreneur, and I had put a decade in. I had 3 successes. I paid substantial taxes by that point, and we take all in bets, right? Like, hey, I'm going to bet my whole family on like signing this company. I think if you had to look at the facts and make a decision, should be on an O1 EB1, and I believe America's opportunity is to attract. I'm not special. Like I think there's hundreds of tens of thousands of people like me, and that just becomes this kind of talent sump. Like I kind of a mechanical engineer, so like it just attracts that talent. So I would scale out O1 EB1, drive precision in the eval criteria, and hopefully keep the process as efficient as it is today. Like if you have a really good lawyer, they should take time to prepare the application, but reviewing the applications is done in weeks now, which is amazing, which is impressive. Then on the H1B, as you learn, I'm doing this, I'm a little direct. So I get like, hey, I think the H1B program is such that it gives false hope to the people that you want to invest in. It's because you in that pool, there's literally hundreds of thousands of people, again, like me, who are on that 7 to 10 year treadmill to get an approval. And I think it's a dead end road. Like if in the 7 to 10 years, as you all appreciate, like the risk profile changes to start businesses, to build companies. Yeah. I've seen so many of my folks who are on, like I'm the only one surviving the people who came on the same boat.
What happened to the rest?
They moved back. You move back to like, how long are you going to wait? Yeah. Right? Like I only stumbled into O1 because I lost my own company, right? So I could not join the company that I started with a good friend of mine.
Okay. You're saying it's giving false hope in the sense it's like, it's just not likely to happen for a lot of people. And that's like that time that you're spending here, it's this huge opportunity cost. The best parts of your career, best parts of your life, you're just waiting for the situation to go change. I sort of, the other side of it is like, they're spending this time working at these like, probably some big tech company, mid-sized company, in many cases, jobs that they're not really fond of, managers that they don't really like, that kind of thing, right? So it is opportunity cost. But for me, I think about it as like, how companies also have holdover, these the H1B candidates where you're just there and it's not easy to have movement. And so companies also sort of like have this stronghold over people there. So it's unfortunate all ways, in all directions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I 100% agree with that, because I definitely in kind of the 0 to 1 early stage, like for what frustrates me the most is kind of unrealized potential, like very high slope, maybe like low Y-intercept individuals who are not on the right kind of framework. And then the H1B program, that's it. I do think just on the flip side, there are people who are just, I think you have to, the O1 EB1, you should really seek out top talent. Right now, I think a lot of folks are deciding to not move to the US, which is probably not in America's interest. Yeah.
Right. Wow. Yeah. We have so much to cover on the immigration side, but it's when we publish this episode, we are going to be covering this hot, new, exciting company that you're working on, building on its launch day. Tell us about Rocks. What is Rocks? Just tell us about it.
Yeah, excited to share. So when this comes out, you would be publicly available for any business in the world. ROCS is an acronym for Revenue Operating System. We didn't want to be Ross from Friends, so it's rocks.com.
Yep.
We are building an agentic CRM that kind of strives to help every business in the world acquire, protect, and grow customers. Kind of the core thesis is based on me being part of a public company where I kind of ran go to market, a big chunk of it. It was $1 billion of revenue, and having some success, but also having a lot of failures. That drove to this realization that we're at a point in time where every business in the world has to transform themselves to thrive in this kind of AI native era, or risk failure. Like, I lost the business, right? So us as competitive operators who build companies, a lot of our motivation is driven by not wanting to lose. And obviously it kind of is marketed around like the fame and glory of success, but it's mostly that. So going one level deeper, is an agentic CRM, which helps at scale businesses manage their customers, and is different from the prior era because it attempts to do the work. So our customers range from Ramp all the way up to kind of high-end customers like MongoDB. And in those customers, they're the most well-compensated, strategic enterprise sellers use Rocks day in, day out to kind of manage their customers. And then the ethos is to supercharge them and not to replace them.
Now, you mentioned the word agentic, right? And I'm kind of curious about, if you had to sum up the state of the union of all things agentic in where we are in November 2024, what would you say that as a state of the art is, given where LLMs are? Where do you see capabilities lacking, and where do you see capabilities headed, or say over the next 8 to 12 months?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's two schools of thought. If you look at applied AI projects, whether they're kind of projects in large companies or startups like ours, there's two approaches. One is driving for automation, right? So really look at specific types of work in the economy and try to automate that away. The second would be augmentation, like Michael Jordan calls it, like intelligent augmentation. There's two approaches. So the first one is to take classes of workflows where you can completely automate that away. So if you look at the coding side or the building side of enterprises, that would be the idea of kind of automating database migrations. In the selling side, it could be automating kind of the long tail SDR or email outreach. So that's one direction of application. The other is supercharging and augmenting existing folks, like Cursor for top engineers or Rocks, hopefully, for enterprise sellers. There, the idea is to decompose the job that these individuals are doing into kind of basically kind of some modules or mini jobs, and automating those away. So when you look at applied AI companies, there's kind of single shot automation approaches, and then there's the augmentation approaches. Behind that, to kind of answer your question, what's the state of the union? What we're learning is the alpha is in data. That being the system of record and be earning the right to manage the data, where you can work with the underlying base models to either augment or automate a certain job, is where we're seeing immediate value for customers. The second is being extremely customer centric. And I'll share like where I made a mistake. So I was chief growth officer for a public company, New Relic. I got obsessed about this problem because we won and we lost, and I kind of had a blissful understanding that the CRMs system is no longer the essential system that businesses run on, and there's a generational enterprise software platform we built. And last year, we put in our own money, kind of did the pre-seed. And at that point, we built a system of record. And then when we started the business in February on the system of intelligence, our agents, we took this kind of the build and they will come approach. We try to build an agent, we try to do all the work. And what we realized that the base models are getting better, but we just didn't have the data to actually kind of complete the work. And so we decomposed our agent down into these sub-modules where we kind of took the different approach, which is, hey, let's just break it down into many jobs to be done and try to kind of automate that away. And so that's kind of my side of the union is base models will improve over time. Applied AI companies can't wait for the base models to get to singularity. If you're applying today, try to build a system that earns the right to manage the data layer. And then in the interaction layer, just proactively engage with customers and build with them and pedal downhill. And that's the approach. We broke all of our Silicon Valley systems muscles and said, okay, we're going to switch to shipping multiple times a day, only weekly targets, no monthly, quarterly targets, and we're just going to work with customers. So we're about 7 months in. We work with some of the best companies. We try to make them better. And it's a very pragmatic approach to build a true kind of application kind of in this agent era. Is that helpful?
Yes, I think if you kind of just go to the details a little bit, when you mentioned agentic CRMs, when you mentioned, say, Cursor, one of the things I think about what somebody makes like a Cursor or Devin, one of these products work is there's such a clear feedback loop about what is right and what is wrong, which makes it better. Like coding is, is deterministic. You're in the REPL and the model can learn and it just gets better and better. And when I look at other use cases which have really taken off, for example, say support, and with folks like what Brett Taylor and others are doing, there are some elements of that. I'm curious about when you talk about CRMs, how does it play out into these discrete tasks, and how do you basically know when you're doing a good job, when you're not doing a good job, and converging on, accuracy or whatever the metric might be?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in our domain, the traditional CRM system was such where the human did all the work. They got all the data in. Once the data is in there, they would drive analytics, workflows up on top of it. And then in this kind of new world, there's going to be a class of software that tries to do the work. And the work, very pragmatically, Sriram, is if you're a customer-facing professional, and there's literally tens of millions of them out there, the three jobs that you do is you plan, you figure out, okay, of all of my customers, who should I work on? Second is you research or prospect. Hey, for these customers, what's going on? Who should I reach out to? And then you engage, which is, okay, I'm going to reach out to them. I'm going to do a call. And then you kind of loop that. So if you look at a calendar, Sunday night to Monday morning is essentially planning. Tuesdays are for research. It's called like pipeline generation. The rest is mostly engaging with customers. That's kind of an abstraction. So and then this whole game is not 100% precision domain. So the idea is, how can we help you gain time, 20 to 30 hours a week, so that you can support more customers? So in our domain, our primary optimization kind of target is time saved. And the way to save time is you decompose the planning, research, and engagement down, where we can do 80 to 90% of the work, and we do those actions where you don't have to complete the complete work, right? So when we started off, because we're close to Scott, and we also built an agent which tried to do the whole work, but in our domain, that model did not apply. Mm-hmm. In our domain, so we kind of decompose it down. So going one level deeper, what does a Rocks agent do? So let's say you are a kind of enterprise account executive at Ramp. Let's say you have 50 customers. You get a swarm of 50 agents. There's one per customer. That agent every Sunday night will essentially give you a note, hey, here are the customers you should work on. And this is because of all of your internal and external context. So that saves about 3 to about 8 hours of work. Next is, you're going to sit down and do research. The agent queues up that work for them, but the human does trigger that. Like, we have taken this approach where there's immense brand risk if you kind of spray and pray today in our domain. Like, it has to be thoughtful. You got to represent the brand. So we'll do that work for you. Mm-hmm. That's already saving about 200 hours kind of a week. And that's kind of what's converted. The next is, okay, now we're in a meeting. We prep all your calls. We support kind of live transcription, and we do the follow-ups. And we can do multimodal. So in the morning, you get a rundown on audio. Hey, here's how the day looks like. At the end, you get a recap and a look forward. So that's kind of our domain, where the customer support, like some people like Decagon, which is amazing, or like Devin and Cursor, that didn't apply. That model break, and we kind of took on this.
Yeah, I think, what I was going to say, sort of similar is, if you're a sales professional, right, like working at an enterprise company, at different parts of the funnel, the work that you do is very different. And the data source for each one of these is very different, like what you get to go work with, right? And so for like the job of a sales professional at very high level is to be able to get as much sales done, right? Like you want to basically be able to be responsible for hitting your quota in revenue in some way. And if that is the goal, if you work backwards from that, the enablement process is sort of very different and sort of bifurcated with respect to data sources. And so the beauty for me for where Rocks comes in is it doesn't sort of punt the work to the sales professional, which is what sort of happens today. The status quo is like disparate data sources. You have a CRM tracker that sort of tracks things, but the work is ultimately done by this person who has to like do different pieces of work at different parts of the pipeline. Instead, it's like, I'll take on the work on your behalf and try and make your life as easy as possible, thereby saving you time. And that you can quantify as a clear delta, as opposed to being like, is it qualitatively better or not, which is not probably like the right way to go look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to build on this, like seemingly like unglamorous or boring at the surface level, but like just like founders and operators, enterprise sellers, they eat what they hunt.
Yeah.
Literally, the time is money, and it's a pure information arbitrage job. They were the first people to bring in pagers and email, like the best kind of legend, like people who work with Slootman, like. So they are always looking for information edge to come across knowledgeable and proactive, just like founders. Ultimately, when you hold the book, when you're an owner in life and in general, like you own the business, you kind of hold the number. Like our approach is, we fundamentally believe, because I've had numbers, is the legacy software systems are not doing you a service for you to be successful. What is the next generation of an essential software system that is there to help you win, right? So today at Rocks, a lot of time we get pulled in is actually by the founder or the CEO, like, hey, I need to grow my business, or I need to kind of protect my customers. I just don't feel like I'm working with the right tools. And then we get pulled in by usually like their best people. And that's the pursuit that we've taken. Can we over time automate all the mundane tasks? Absolutely. And Sriram, it goes to your point, like I have a very visceral understanding of the impact of automation on the broader economy. We build robots in warehouses. Right. And I think what us as technology builders strive for is these fundamental changes in kind of unit economics of your customer and the broader market. And so what we're driving towards is how can we enable these businesses to be a lot more efficient?
Right.
The way to get there, there's many paths. Like we've taken the approach of just going for your most skilled people and kind of make them more productive.
Now, I want to maybe zoom out on that scenario painted slightly a little bit, because one of the things I've been spending a lot of time thinking about is AI transforming, traditional industries, right? Like AI transformation is, I think, what a lot of people call it. So you outlined how it's going to transform sales, for example, and time is money, etc. And you're helping salespeople meet that quota better, make more money. But if you kind of zoom out, give us a prediction for how you see AI. That could be agentic, it could be broad use of LLMs, a combination where it attacks traditional industries, right? Manufacturing, services industries. There are a lot of companies trying to slice up this area. Yeah. What do you think is interesting? What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. Until like we do kind of attain singularity, kind of my fundamental belief is that in every vertical, the winning businesses across industries, manufacturing, industrials, logistics, the winning businesses will win because their fundamental unit economics are different, i.e. they're just dramatically more efficient. I know, Sriram, you're part of the journey. I think what Elon showed at Twitter, that's actually panned out in every leading business. If you look at every vertical, whether it's Mongo or Datadog, any of these businesses, they're just dramatically more disciplined, more efficient. than anybody else. And my core belief is every business has to transform that way. If not, it's going to be hard for them to win. So one ladder down is, to make it super simple, like I do kind of believe that in a business, there are builders and sellers, people who build the thing, the product or the service, engineers, designers, product managers, and then sellers, pre-sales, post-sales, marketers. Until the enterprise runs on itself, there will be supercharged builders and sellers. People who are helping them will have to evolve to become builders and sellers. That's kind of my mindset. And this is across every vertical. So even when we build Rocks, we build it as a system that hopefully powers every business in the world. And we spend a ton of time with oil and gas companies and healthcare companies and publishing houses. And so in our domain, any kind of professional or consumer, kind of a knowledge worker interfacing with a customer, I think that in quarters, they will be close to 2x of their productivity. They should be able to support 2 times more customers than they do today. It's just because where we're at, over time, that probably kind of increases more. And kind of the secret with that kind of naming names is that these best companies, which are growing at the fastest rate, are also growing the most efficiently. Then they might be doubling revenue, but they're actually not doubling their teams.
Wow.
And that's actually what's happening already in the economy. It's happened in the last 2 to 3 years. It's just most people don't know it.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. It's like productivity goes up. A lot of this value is accruing to, companies like you, like companies like Rocks, right? And I see this whole narrative about AI taking away jobs. I actually think it's the opposite, right? That happens where companies are going to get more productive. You're going to have to hire more people. Everything goes a lot faster, better, bigger, scales, much more furiously than before. So I don't see this as like replacing jobs. If anything, I think we're going to have to hire more people to be able to just keep up with the scale and this productivity gain that we're seeing now.
Yeah, absolutely. I always go back to my experience at Kiva, even kind of growing up in like mining towns in India. Like in Kiva, like we were young engineers on a road going to Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, Kentucky. MIT engineers getting drop shipped to deploy robots in warehouses. Trust me, I'm an Indian, not from there. We had to deploy robots. We dealt with very human conversations about talking about automation and their impact. I think there's lots of pros and cons about Amazon's success and their impact on kind of, for lack of a better word, like the logistics industry or blue collar work. I also saw the pros of it. Like we're immigrants and we look at the pros of America like far outweigh the cons. I saw hundreds of kind of people directly interfacing with me, thousands who went on to get college degrees or moved up in the Amazon chain. This is sheer prosperity that it drove. For me personally, I might be completely wrong. Just kind of is a good encapsulation of what kind of technological progress drives. In the micro, it feels like it's automation and people losing jobs. But in the macro, like it really rises like mass kind of sorts of like people. And I obviously benefited from it. I've seen so many people in the US benefit from it. And that's the hope. I think when I look at software, everybody asks me, Ishan, what are you doing in enterprise software? I think the visceral piece is I'm obsessed about owners. I'm obsessed about this idea of owning your destiny and kind of how do you build amazing software and products which unleashes kind of creativity and productivity so that you can go on and do kind of better things. It kind of seems warm and fuzzy, but for us as product builders, that's actually what motivates us.
Cool. We sort of missed the headline here. So what are you announcing, right? When this goes out, what's the launch?
Thanks for the plug, Aarthi. Thank you. My team would be disappointed if I didn't do it. So we're launching the publicly available version of Rocks. Any company in the world can use Rocks to acquire, kind of grow, and kind of protect their customers. Our promise to them is it's not perfect, but it's the most real application of agents that you can use today. Our ambition is to make the best better. We're launching with OpenAI, Ramp, and a bunch of amazing companies. And our currency is that it's real. Like our kind of commitment to our customers is we'll build the best engineering team and go to market. We'll make the best better. And we're backed by amazing people like you and who are supporting us. And this is it for me and for the team. This is an attempt to build an enduring company. So we're launching it. A fun fact is about 10,000 of the world's best sellers probably have an email in their inbox right now, which says their Rocks agent form is ready, so they can actually use it without reaching out to us.
Wow, that's awesome. Very cool. I've seen a demo of Rocks, right? And this is a problem I've had, working at enterprise companies. I'm on a board of another company. So I look at this, and when I saw the demo, I was just blown away, right? Because for me, the comparison is I see it less about what an agentic system can do. I see it as like a practical problem that, my sales folks will have. And what tools are we giving them? What are we equipping them with to be able to get their work done faster, right? So when you showed me the demo, I was like, wait, this can be real. This is amazing, right? And so I'm really excited. I'm excited for, as boring as people think enterprise software is, I think there is a lot of value there, and there is a lot of, just low-hanging fruit and just driving just better sort of quality of software, and just getting people to go deploy it and leverage it. So congrats on the launch and getting it out the door. I think this is the beginning. We're going to hear a ton more about Rocks in the future days.
Yeah, appreciate the support, and hopefully we earn the right to kind of keep supporting a bunch of customers for a long time.
It's going to be fantastic. And also, I think it's just kind of amazing. Sometimes when you kind of do these launch announcements, they're fantastic. It's a huge day. But I love the fact that we got to cover your entire story, all the way from small industrial town in India, and all the way through quizzing through here, because I think it kind of paints a story of not just, a company building something really, really interesting using AI, but also why America needs to bring people like you here and make it easy for people like you to do what you do, which is create innovative companies and add value. It's just a fantastic story. So this is so much fun.
Yeah, appreciate it, and thanks for taking the time. If I may add, on the last point, just like you all, I'm a dad. My son's American. I'm Indian, based in the US. Very, very, very pro both India and the US. And I think the one thing that I've learned that hopefully folks don't make the same mistakes is have a fuzzy but high conviction North Star. Don't care about anybody else. Just stick to that North Star and then work insanely hard. I think people underestimate how much you have to work hard to put wins on the board. I am not world-class by any means. If it's your career-long pursuit, just work very, very hard. And that's kind of what I kind of think of myself as we're raising kids, is how can we be good examples to my kids? And it's just work very hard. Forget about everything else. Nobody cares. Just work.
Yeah, you just tell your kids, you're like, hey, do you know how much hard was to try and get into IITs? You folks have it so easy.
I was going to ask this. Usually we end the episode and what advice, especially if you're a founder, multi-time founder like yourself, what advice do you have for other founders? It's funny because there is such big overlap. I think Arvind from Perplexity, we asked him the same thing, and he said the exact same thing. He's like, run like hell, work really hard, work crazy until you just cannot absolutely work. It's it really, literally is about how much effort that you can put in.
Also, to wrap, I'm going to give you a total curveball question. Aarthi does not know this. She's like, what? Every quizzer has a story or a memory of pulling out an answer to a question nobody expected you to. I have one, right? So what is yours?
That's a great question. I think this is way back. Actually, this is not even one of those glamorous. I went to the finals of those things. This was a regional quiz contest. I remember I was in the 5th grade, and somebody had asked me who invented the sewing machine or something like that. And then the answer was at least a specific type of sewing machine. And it's an odd question. The answer was Singer, E.W. Singer. The way I knew that was because my grandmom, who used to come from Calcutta, spend the summers with us, she was an avid, we didn't have a lot. They used to make our clothes and stuff. I remember I saw the machine, I read the brochure.
Yeah.
I saw that brochure, and the lady asked the question. I said, wow, I just, yeah, I know this answer. And I said that, and honestly, nobody else got. I was like quietly like, wow, that was good. That was
Oh
good.
gosh, that's great. But that's right. But I'm going to give you mine because I have such a fond memory of this, which is when I was in actually because it's kind of coincidence. Like when I was in I think like 8th or 9th grade, but somebody had gotten me a core Python programming book just accidentally, and I was flipping through it. And in Python, one of the things you said was that I'm not even sure people do it anymore, but when you pick sort of temporary variables in Python, you pick spam and eggs because
Yeah.
Python had a long sort of association with Monty Python, and they were doing that. And
Yeah.
the next day, literally the next day, right, I'm at this quiz contest. It's super heated. We're up against this college who are full of jerks. We hate them, right? Like, and the first question is literally which programming language uses spam and eggs. And man, it's one of those things where, on Instagram these days, you're like that kid who hits that buzzer beater. Like that was that for me. I was that kid who hit the buzzer beater. I was the talk of the school. It was all downhill for me from that because I kind of peaked at that moment.
Yeah, Sriram, that's a good example. I don't want to add here because Scott at Cognition are good friends of ours, and these folks were like competitive programmers, and they're going to answer questions like 3 seconds. I said, I could answer like trivia questions about sports, sitcoms, all the random stuff that had no value back in India, but great to find somebody like you, like who also had the same skill set.
There we go. Okay. But after the YouTube comments for this are going to be split. We're going to have the people who are hating and defending Manipal. We're going to have the quiz people. It's going to be great. But Ishan, there's so much fun. Your story is fascinating. What you're working on is fascinating. All the best with everything. Rocks. And thank you so much. We should come back on the show. It's so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely. This is fun. Thank you.
All right.